Welcome our special guest for our Tampa Bay Buccaneers team preview. Tampa Bay Buccaneers beat reporter, works for the PewterReport.com, Trevor Sikkema. Now, Trevor does not consider himself an expert, according to his Twitter profile, but he does have Wi-Fi, which honestly, I think he's selling himself a little bit short, but, probably a lot of these so-called pundits fall into that same category. How you doing, Trevor?
I'm doing good, man. Yeah, that's just a little way for me to make sure I remind myself to not take what I do not take myself too seriously, no matter what I'm doing. So,
all right. Well, I mean, you got Wi-Fi. That counts for something. It means you're paying the bills at least. Unless you're getting it free from Starbucks or something like that.
Not this time. But plenty of other times I have doing podcasts, but not this time. We're pretty secure.
Sure. All right. Well, I'm going to get you started out with the hypothetical that I ask all beat writers. And just so you know, I think I've asked probably 6 beat writers, including one pretty big guy that works for CBS. And right now they're pretty much split right down the middle on this. So I'm interested to see what you say. First question, what's your least favorite football team?
My least favorite football team?
You got a football team you just hate?
I mean, for the longest time, it was the Patriots.
Okay.
Just because I was sick of them. But like at this point, it's just like I gotta respect them. I don't know, like I can't even hate them anymore. So
Trevor.
I guess it was
yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Okay,
you can hate them.
If you guys say so, sure. I guess it's the Patriots.
Well, you have a very divided podcast duo here. The Wolf is just an absolute in the tank Patriot homer, and I'm not. So, I'm not a Patriots fan. So anyway, all right, you're a little lukewarm on this hatred, but I'm going to ask you the question anyway. So option number 1 is you come out tomorrow and you've just had a complete change on your entire view of life. And you come out as just a diehard, 100% all-in Patriots fan. Just get up on the mountaintops and you talk about how great the Patriots are and how great Tom Brady is, Bill Belichick, all that stuff. All the other teams you used to like, now you talk trash about them, and you're just completely in the tank for the Patriots for the rest of your life. That's number 1. Number 2 is you stand at the 50-yard line of any regulation football field, wearing no protection except one of those leather helmets that they wore in like the 1930s. And you give a prime Marshawn Lynch a 15-yard head start to just bowl into you as hard as he can one time. And you can't try to get out of the way or anything. You just got to take it. Which one of those would be more appealing to you?
So I'm either a diehard Patriots fan
for life, and you got to be one of the really annoying ones that you just want to punch all the time.
Or I'm getting smacked by Marshawn Lynch. That's what we're going with here?
One time.
Oh, man. See, I'm torn because I think the easy answer would be to just like take the hit and get over it.
Right.
But
if you can get over it, yeah.
2 years ago, fun fact, I collapsed my lung and I was in the hospital for like 10 days. So I'm terrified that might happen again. So you know what? There are certain Sam Adams that are pretty good, so I'm going to go with being a diehard Patriots fan.
All right. I mean, I think I really think that's the right response, but, I'm surprisingly about half the people I've asked have been like, yeah, I'm just going to take the hit from beast mode. I'll recover. And we're just kind of like, are you sure you'll recover? I'm not sure you'll recover. Right.
I don't know if they'll recover. Like that dude could do internal damage to you,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, Grant Cohn for the Santa Rosa Press Democrat was pretty adamant that beast mode would kill him in that situation. So he was basically like, well, whatever the other option is, that's the one I'm taking. So,
yeah, I mean, that's a good point because death is certainly on the table at that point.
Yeah, even if it's like 10%, it's there. It's looming in the background. All right, well, that's a fair answer. We're going to get you started on the real interview now. I'm going to let the Wolf start things off. Go ahead, Wolf.
So just before we even dive into the Bucs, are you a fantasy guy yourself, Trevor?
Yeah, no, I am. I'm I don't know if I would say fortunately or unfortunately a fantasy football guy, but yeah, I'm pretty into it.
Nice. How long have you been doing it for?
Gotta be like 8 or 9 years now.
Any titles? Any trophies?
Yeah, actually. So I was titleless for a very long time until 2 years ago. I won my first one, and then I've won 2 other ones after that. So we have the main league that I'm in like 7 leagues, and I know it's too many. But like the main league I'm in, we have a WWE championship belt that we have that the winner gets, and like you ship it off to whoever wins it. And obviously when you have any kind of get together with any of the members of the league, you're certainly got the belt around your shoulder and all that. So I won that a year ago, and I was pretty that basically hooked me for life to always want to continue playing.
That is incredible. Send us a picture if you have any screenshots of that Luminen. We'd love to feature that on the site. We're always looking
I will.
That sounds like one definitely worth featuring. That's awesome. Congrats on the WWE title belt. Hopefully it's in your it's a long-standing reign for you.
Yeah.
But getting into the actual Buccaneer stuff while you're here, the buzziest player so far this offseason has to be Doug Martin. We've heard he's looked as good as he's ever been from the GM. He's the Doug Martin of 2015. They're saying he's bulkier but quicker. Impressive burst, the most impressive player at OTAs. Is this jiving with what you're seeing and hearing out there? Is the muscle hamster back, or what should we expect with Doug Martin?
I'll say just off the bat, he hates that nickname. He really hates that muscle hamster nickname, and nobody has a good nickname for him though. So people just keep calling him the muscle hamster. But anyway, so we're not allowed to say that to his face, but plenty of people still. No,
that's actually great information. We had no idea, but I hate it too.
So. Yeah, but what you said, the reports, I've contributed to some of these reports as I've seen them in practice. I've gotten a couple videos and written a couple stories on it. We really did not think that Doug Martin was going to be on this team when he was going through everything that he was going through last year. His numbers were down. I think he was below 3 yards a carry, even when he was healthy. He's only been healthy for 2 out of the 5 years that he's been with the Buccaneers. Now, granted, those 2 years have been phenomenal. But we really thought that he would not be on this team come next year because we just thought with the suspension looming and with the running back position being kind of the revolving door that we're seeing it is in the NFL, we thought the Buccaneers would make the move, especially with a deep running back class this year, take a running back early, either Leonard Fournette, Dalvin Cook, whoever. They end up not doing that, and the big reason why is because they kept talking about in the offseason, Doug Martin, he's focused. He's ready to go. We like what we've seen from him. We think that he's put the past in the past, the dark things that led to his suspension and all of that. And so we finally got to see him on the field last month, or really over the last couple of weeks. And, man, every time a running back's making a play, I always look up and I go, who is that? It's Doug Martin every time. He looks fast. I want to say he looks powerful, but, of course, we haven't seen them in pads yet. But he looks like he is in phenomenal shape. He does miss those first 3 games to open up the year, so that's kind of tricky, certainly from a fantasy football perspective. But if you're grabbing him late and you want to stash him, health wise, looks wise, the eye test certainly he's passing it with flying colors as we're getting into as we got done with mandatory minicamp. He looked very good there.
Alrighty, so and then let's say, like you mentioned, the suspension, obviously a pain in the ass for fantasy owners, but who are we handcuffing with? Who do we take in that last round to, if you take Doug, in the 7th, 8th, and then you have to have a fill-in for those first 3. And then I love the strategy, like you're saying, when he's healthy, Doug Martin is, an RB1. He's a monster, and people aren't respecting him right now. And so really just got to slug through 3 games. It's early on in the season. And who's going to fill in, though? Because we've seen other guys fill in pretty well for him. Is it Jaquiz Rogers? Is it Charles Sims? Who's the backup that we should be targeting if we take Doug Martin early on all this hype that he's got right now?
They like Sims. I think Sims is certainly going to be involved in the game plan, especially on passing downs, because they like how he is as a receiver. But I think most of the work is still going to go to Jaquiz Rogers, as we saw a lot last year. There's not really a reason for them to go away from that. And there's those first 3 games, Miami, Chicago, and Minnesota. I looked this up right before we got on. Miami was the 3rd worst running defense in the NFL last year. Chicago was the 6th worst, and Minnesota was the 13th worst. So if you're picking a running back from the Bucs and you're looking to get something out of him in those early weeks, like if you're looking to, like you said, handcuff him with Martin, I'd pick up Jaquiz Rogers because he's a steady guy. I really don't know how he bounced around the NFL as many times as he did because he's such a steady Eddie, and he had more than 4 yards to carry, I believe, last year when he was running the ball. He's just a power guy who's going to get you what you need to, and when they get down in that goal line, especially, that's what everybody's talking about. And, fantasy football, that's the big thing. It's when you cash in on the goal line. Tight ends are certainly going to take away from the little bit of the opportunities, but, if they're running the ball, Jaquiz Rogers is getting the ball on the goal line, no question about it. Sims is going to get a lot of complimentary work, and he even might have a couple of games here and there where he'll have notable fantasy numbers, but I wouldn't foresee any of that coming in the goal line. I think that's all Jacquizz Rodgers. So if you're looking to cash out, if you're looking for a handcuff, he would be my guy there.
And when Martin comes back, is it his show? Is he going to take over? Or is Jacquizz anything that could linger at the goal line, like a vulture situation? Or is it the Doug Martin show once he's back?
Yeah, I mean, talent history-wise would make you think that certainly it's him. Doug Martin is running with the first team now, even knowing that he's going to miss time. So he's completely running with the first team. And we talked to their running back coach, Tim Spencer. We asked him this question, and he said, no, like Doug Martin, whoever is the best running back in practice is going to play with the ones. And Doug Martin the entire time has consistently played with the ones. Jacquizz Rodgers has played with the twos. And so that makes me think that it's going to be the same thing going into training camp. And then as we get into the regular season, it's basically going to be Martin's show. Now, somebody asked me this, and it gets a little tricky. If the Bucs are sitting there at 3-0 and the offense is clicking great and they're running the ball great, what do you do? I still think Martin gets the ball, but in that scenario, yeah, maybe he has a little bit more of a carry share there. But, I mean, just talent alone, Martin is clearly the most talented back on the team. He does exactly what Sims does and Rodgers does and more. So I think the team definitely knows that. That's why he's still on the roster, and I would fully expect him to be the starter come week 4.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Mike Evans. We've been talking a lot about the phrase or the term target hog recently. And Mike Evans, I would say, qualifies as just, he's glossary definition of target hog. The guy just gets the ball thrown his way all the time. Right now he's going top 10 in pretty much any fantasy draft. Last year he had almost 100 catches, over 1,300 yards, 12 touchdowns. And obviously a lot of that is because he got targeted 175 times, which I'm pretty sure was the most in the league. All right, so now he's got plenty of other weapons. He's got this huge deep threat in Deshaun Jackson. We got O.J. Howard. He's also been added. So what are you expecting, we'll just say stats-wise, out of Evans in 2017 with all these extra mouths to feed? You think this is going to end up helping his numbers or hurting him?
Yeah, so it's the debate of whether a better offense, a more dynamic offense, and more weapons is going to take pressure off of him and he's actually going to thrive, or it's going to obviously – be more mouths to feed, like you said. So I would just say this, I'm just like I'm not an expert, I'm not a crystal ball guy, certainly, but I will say that Evans is certainly going to still be the focal point of this offense. Like it is, whether they get the ball more or less than whatever you think to these other guys, Evans is still their priority number one. When they're running goal line, Evans is still their guy. When they're running the 1-minute drill, Evans is still their guy. It's wherever he is on the field, he will be an integral part and really the feature part of what they're doing to move the ball on offense. So I would assume that certainly that target number is going to go down for him because, Freddie Martino and Russell Shepard were the guys lining up opposite him by the end of the year. So they're not going to force feed him nearly as much. But I think the percentage or the chunk of targets that he's going down isn't going to exactly correlate to how many catches he also goes down as a percentage-wise. I still think that he's going to get plenty of catches. He's going to still get plenty of looks. It's not nearly, like you said, it's not going to be as much of a volume. Because I know a lot of fantasy football, people love to talk about the targets thing. They're big into the volume equals production from a fantasy standpoint. And Evans is not going to get the 175 targets he got last year. He's just not. But you're still I'm just going to say he's still going to be a feature part of that offense. He is still the number one wide receiver in Tampa. Absolutely. So they're going to game plan almost everything that they do around him. And I think most weeks you're going to see that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like every time they got in trouble last year, Winston would just throw the ball into triple coverage in Evans. And, I mean, the completion percentage probably was not crazy high on those.
Sure.
But that was his security blanket on all that stuff. Maybe that happens less. But, if he gets 30, 40 less targets, maybe he catches like a higher percentage, like you said. I think I agree with that assessment.
Yeah, quality over quantity this year, it seems like. Now, we're actually saying to take Mike Evans over Odell. I know you're a fantasy guy yourself, and that's one thing that most sites aren't saying. Where do you stand on that debate, Mike Evans versus Odell fantasy-wise? Who would you take?
I love Odell. I think he's great, but I do think, I think the Bucs I think the Bucs offense is going to be more efficient than the Giants offense, and therefore I think their number one is going to be more efficient than the Giants number one. Because the Giants, we're going to get into that debate a lot, which wide receiver is better, which wide receiver core is better. And I think it's the Bucs, and I think it's going to be more efficient with the Bucs because I think Jameis is going to step up a big amount too, because Jameis likes a lot of those bigger throws, and so Mike Evans is going to be on the receiving end of those a lot more. And yeah, I'll be on that train with you guys. I'll take Mike Evans this year over Odell.
Awesome. Well, speaking of the big throws, obviously the newest addition there, Deshaun Jackson, he led the league in yards per catch last year at 17.9. We've talked a lot about before you came on that, Todd Monken and Dirk Cutter, their whole offense is all about the vertical, the 4 verticals, the deep ball and all that. But they didn't really have the weapons outside of Evans to really execute that until now. And they go and handpick one of the best deep threats to play this game in recent memory. So do you think this is going to be a match made in heaven? What do you expecting out of Deshaun Jackson here?
I do think that it's going to be a match made in heaven, but I will say that it's going to take time, not only from a game plan standpoint, but also with Jameis Winston, because Jameis Winston obviously has never had a guy like this, certainly at the pros, that he's been able to rely on. And it's not just deep threats with Deshaun Jackson. They have him, at the mini camps, I was watching them because the defense, all corners have to play off coverage against Deshaun Jackson because he'll just burn you if you play close. So when they play off coverage, they just do simple little routes where Deshaun runs fast for 10 yards, immediately cuts around, they throw him a quick pass. And so, boom, it's like there's a target right there. And so Deshaun is going to get more than just these bomb plays. But I would just say that from a game plan standpoint, we're all very wide-eyed. We all have our imaginations going crazy right now what the Bucs offense could possibly be, but I would just say that it's going to take time, and I think most of that is going to come from Winston's standpoint, because he's going to need, and it's not going to, the timetable is not going to start until week 1. It's not going to start until there's meaningful minutes and Winston can start to really get that connection going with Deshaun Jackson. I think it'll take a little bit longer than people are giving it credit for, but once it starts to click, I mean, if you've got Deshaun Jackson on your team, I think near the end of that year, especially if he stays healthy, this is going to be a really potent offense. Or even, in that middle third of the season, I think you might see a couple really big games from Deshaun Jackson. So if you have like a timetable or a calendar in which you're predicting when you could get your big games from your wide receivers, Deshaun Jackson, I think in right of that middle chunk of the year, could really flourish, because that's about the timetable I think he'd really start to get clicking with the game plan and with his quarterback.
You're getting the Wolf really excited right now. I was just watching your face, and you're like grinning a little bit as he's talking about when he's talking about imaginations running wild. It's like if this was a cartoon, I could see the little thought bubble over your head. This is like porn for the Wolf.
Oh, yeah, that's the stuff that just gets me going. And I like this idea, though, that you're talking about. He's not just going to be a deep ball guy. They're using him a lot in these quick receiver screens. Because something about Deshaun Jackson from the fantasy perspective is he's always been a boom bust guy, where it's you're going to get 25 and he's going to win you a week, or he's going to get you 0 or one catch and just ruin everything. So do you think he might be able to find a little more consistency with the Bucs this year, or is it still going to be that whole boom or bust type of vibe to him, do you think?
I think the nature of just who he is as a wide receiver will always keep him in that category a little bit. But I will say that, the coaches are more than willing to get the most out of him as a mismatch player wherever it is. Like they've had him run around the slot in trip wide receiver sets, even now here's a little bit of insider information, even out of the backfield a little bit. I've seen a couple plays that they've been trying to work with Doug.
You're killing us over here. The Wolf's losing it.
I'm too excited. Sorry. I got to go clean up quick. I'll be right back.
So this is not scripted, folks. I'm not feeding them what they want to hear.
No, well, we love it, though.
But that's kind of the Bucs offense. There's just so much that could happen with it, and we really got to we're all talking about the possibilities of what could be, and I'm giving you guys little bits and pieces of what I've seen in OTAs. Now, granted, again, we're talking about shorts and T-shirts practice, and even in preseason, we'll get a better look of what they possibly might be doing. But the ceiling is through the roof. You're going to be drafting Bucs players. If you're drafting Bucs players, you're probably going to be drafting them off potential of what you think they could be. And Deshaun Jackson, yes, I think he is much more of a complete wide receiver than a lot of us even think. Now, will that have something to say with whether he's a boom or bust fantasy player? We'll have to see, because, again, that gets more into the more mouths to feed, how much of those smaller touches they can manufacture for him, or will they even want to? So you're going to be running a little bit of a risk here with Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because some weeks that some players, like I said, just time of possession, it's natural. There's just not going to be enough throws to get these guys, even if they're all working. Sometimes there's just not going to be enough throws to get what you want out of them. So it's a little bit of a risk of who's going to be a decoy one week, who's going to be a feature guy, but certainly there's potential in a lot of these guys. And I think they're going to try and get the most out of Deshaun Jackson, because not only the coaching staff, but general manager Jason Light too. Like Jackson was his guy like the whole time. And so they were ecstatic to bring him on, and they're going to open up the playbook as much as they possibly can to get him the ball, I think.
Well, speaking of drafting guys on potential and getting excited about that, let's talk about O.J. Howard, who the Wolf in his write-up describes as bringing an insane amount of athleticism, which I actually think is accurate. And the team was really, really happy when he ended up falling to them in the draft. But we got Cameron Brate, who's coming off a huge season where he just caught loads and loads of touchdowns. Guy I kind of wasn't paying attention to until too late for me to get him in fantasy, but he had tons of touchdowns. And their red zone report is obviously supposedly carrying over into the spring. So what do fantasy owners make out of this tight end position? Is this something to stay away from, or is this something where you're going to pick one guy and he's going to go off, or you're going to, it's just going to be like shooting ducks in a barrel, Dwayne Allen, Jack Doyle style in Indianapolis? What do you think?
Yeah, I think, because it's really interesting. You play tight end roulette and you play like waiver wire systems with a lot of these tight ends the last couple of years, and you wonder if the Buccaneers are going to be another duo that's going to be in there. I'll just say that I thought that about a month ago I wrote that expect O.J. Howard to be the top tight end in week 1. That's wrong. He's not going to be. It's going to still be Cameron Brate. But here's the thing about Brate. Brate is not near the blocker that Howard is. So I think that sooner rather than later, they're going to have Howard in on running downs. When you're running 21 personnel or 11 personnel, you're going to get hit. I think that in the receiving category, Brate's going to play more of the early snaps. But in terms of on the field, I think O.J. Howard might be on the field plenty. So I saw a couple of plays of them in the red zone. Now, I will say this. Most of the red zone targets for tight ends went to Cameron Brate, and they're going to continue to go to Cameron Brate early on in the season. So if you pick O.J. Howard, you might be waiting on him a little more than you think, because that chemistry between Winston and Brate is fantastic, and it's still fantastic. And here they are. They're just adding to it in the spring, like you said. That's what we're seeing here at practice. O.J. Howard is playing okay. He's practiced well, but he is still a rookie. He's still learning a lot of stuff. He's still learning all kinds of chemistry with his quarterback. Now, I will say that I already saw one play they have designed where, they hike the ball. It's a play action. The entire offense, they got 2 tight ends on the field. They got Cam Brate on one side of the line, O.J. Howard on the other. And they had, it's play action. They're rolling to the right. The whole offense is rolling to the right. O.J. Howard's blocking, and then all of a sudden he slips and he goes left, and there's literally nobody on him. They just chuck it to him, easy touchdown. That's the kind of stuff that's going to exist in the playbook. And O.J. Howard might pay off for you here and there on little catches like that, but I just don't have a safe enough answer right now until we really get into training camp and in the preseason to how they're going to use it, because this team loves to use 2 tight ends. We know that they do. We know that that's what they want to do. But at this point, it's hard to say who's going to get it. I would say that Brate's still going to be tight end 1 for a fantasy perspective, especially early on. But who knows? I mean, if Howard really gets in there as a blocker, he's going to be on the field plenty of times in play action situations. So I think that you're right. It might be too much of a this or that tight end situation early on. But if you're gonna go with one and you need production early on in the year, I'd go with Brate. Certainly, if you're looking for long term, you're looking for a guy to stash. Obviously, you take Howard off his potential.
Awesome, yeah. I mean, you've hinted a few times now about these little trick plays from Deshaun Jackson in the backfield to OJ Howard on these little slip screens and different things. I know last year I remember reading that Todd Monken just loves the trick plays, loves creative offenses, but we didn't see a whole ton of them last year. No. What are you expecting out of this offense this year from just these early signs of spring, and what does it mean for Jameis Winston in year 3?
Yeah, I think that. I think that they're going to be more creative than they ever had because I think for the first time they have the personnel that they actually want. Going to last year, a year ago at this time, the Buccaneers thought that their starting receiving core was going to be Mike Evans, Vincent Jackson, Austin Seferian-Jenkins, and then either like Kenny Bell or Adam Humphries playing like a slot role. Well, it turned out Vincent Jackson got hurt, was basically nothing all year. Austin Seferian-Jenkins is an idiot. And so he wasn't even on the team. And so you're rolling with just kind of like a bunch of nobodies. And so you're like you said, you're looking at a creative offensive coach who likes to think outside the box and get his guys in mismatched situations. And you're like, where's the personnel? Where are the players? We don't have it. And so it's really it's hard to answer that question just because when I named off who they had last year and who they ended up starting, then all of a sudden you go to the offense that they have this year, and it is so drastically different that really you don't even know how often they're going to try and do trick plays. Like I said, we had 3 days of minicamp that we got to watch, and within those 3 days, I saw a plethora of unique options from trip wide receiver sets to like Jackson and Martin in the backfield at the same time. How they were using the 2 tight ends, and who knows how standard that's going to be, and who knows how many times those are going to be called. But I'll just say this: they have the personnel to call it. They can do it whenever they want, and I don't think Monken's not a guy to shy away from big plays, and I don't think Cutter is either. He knows what it's going to take to win. And just to your second part of that question, talking about Winston, he's the guy to have on the Buccaneers offense, because if any of these guys are really going off the way that we think they are, Winston is going to be flourishing. And a big part of why he struggled a lot last year was certainly the turnovers. And he does need to get a little bit better in accuracy, certainly, but I think him holding on to the ball too long, his offensive line not really gelling, his wide receiver core not getting open, really just did not help him. And this is a kid who will try to win football games at all costs. And I think we saw his fantasy numbers struggle a little bit last year because of it, because of that situation and knowing that he thought he had to win the game at all times with some of these throws, and it just ended up hurting them more often than he would have liked. And so this year, in theory, certainly, things are supposed to be a lot easier. They have a lot more wide receiver weapons that should get open with more regularity, which would turn into obviously more yards, which would turn into more confidence, more rolls, less turnovers. You got to think that if this offense is going to be what it's going to be, like if you're going to get what you want to get out of OJ Howard in year 1, if you want to get what you get out of Cam Brate, if you think that there's enough mouths to feed Deshaun Jackson and Mike Evans, it's all going to come off Jameis's arm. And I think he's had back-to-back 4,000-yard seasons throwing the ball, but he just needs to cut out on the turnovers. And so that's the big thing for him, whether he has the weapons or not. He has to make the smart decisions. And he's looked better in camp, I got to say. But, again, just shirts and shorts. So we'll have to see as training camp rolls on.
All right, Trevor, any names out there that the general public or even guys like us who like to consider ourselves a slight notch above the general public might not know about that you might have some insight into in the Bucs training camp?
Well, I guess we didn't talk about Chris Godwin. And
well, let's talk.
They really like Chris Godwin. They really do. And I think it's going to end up being they're going to put 3 wide receivers out there more often than not. And those 3 wide receivers are going to be Mike Evans, Deshaun Jackson, Chris Godwin. And they have dialed up quite a few plays from 40-yard bombs to red zone looks for Chris Godwin. And let me tell you, he's a good wide receiver. He's a really good wide receiver. He gets open. He knows how to catch the ball. He's got to be a little bit more determined when that ball gets in his hand. I've seen a couple instances where it's kind of hit him in the hands. He should have had it. Defender comes in late and just knocks it out. And it's like, that thing's got to be your baby. Like if it touches your hands, like it's got to be yours. And so that's a little thing that he's learning. But I would just say that this team really likes him a lot. So if you were trying to pick up a Bucs weapon that could contribute every single week, he would be a guy that I would pick up.
Yeah, I know the coach. I saw a report that Cutter compared him to Roddy White, who he coached over in Atlanta.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
That's an interesting little comparison. Crafty little veteran like that.
Yep.
He's a rookie too, right? Godwin, isn't this his rookie year? So to get that type of practice early, it tells you a lot about what the team thinks. Yeah, that's a good call. What's your ultimate prediction for the Bucs this year? Just like a season-long prediction. What do you think?
I mean, it's got to be playoffs for them. They've opened up the checkbook. They've brought back Mike Smith, who is obviously a proven coach in this league, just to be a defensive coordinator. Cutter is a risk-taking head coach. He now has the exact personnel that he has ever wanted on off. Like, think about it. This is a guy who is like to have dynamic wide receivers and 2 tight ends and a feature back. He has all of them. I think for the first time in his career, he has all of them in one offense. And so this is a team that has been on a playoff drought for forever, especially in a playoff success drought in forever. I think they made it the last time was either in 07, 09, and they lost in the first round. So last time we're talking about legitimate playoffs for the Buccaneers is when they had that Super Bowl team and the year after that. So it's been a long time coming for this team. And you've got to think they do have a tougher schedule. Obviously play the Patriots, play the Packers late in December, but there's just too much talent here. There's too much talent, and there are too many good coaches on this team for them to not make the playoffs. And I know they're in the NFC South's tough division, but I think it's a playoff-bound team, and it should be a playoff-bound team.
Good stuff. Hey, before we get you out of here, Wolf, have you seen Trevor's Twitter page?
I have, yeah. I popped on earlier.
You seen the tweet that's pinned to the top of the page about Kelvin Benjamin?
Yeah, Kelvin.
I mean, this guy he's one of us. I mean, we had a whole segment on a podcast recently about his tubbiness. So
I mean, those are the best. Like the Eddie Lacy fat saga.
Oh, he's in it too.
What was the other? There's another one that's. There was another fat saga I was forgetting, but I thought of that, and people kind of loved it. So that was a fun day on Twitter when I tweeted
we have a kind of a little informal get together of players that we like to call the Tub Club, and both of those guys are in it. Carlos Williams is also in the Tub Club, but
of course, yeah, of course.
So I mean, that warmed my heart to see that.
Cardale Jones? Is Cardale Jones the quarterback of it?
Yeah, and Jamarcus Russell is kind of a member for life.
Sure.
But I mean, he's not playing anymore. But he rides one of those motorized scooters to the meetings, probably. And sits around the buffet.
That's harsh, but that might not be wrong.
Yeah, well, fair on both points.
Beyond the Tub Club, this was a fantastic, and the Tub Club included, but that was a fantastic interview. Really appreciate the time, Trevor, from all the insights and these little trick plays we're seeing, and to know how these new weapons are gelling and meshing, and just the high expectations of this offense. We had them, we feel it, and feeling it even more now, hearing about all this new creativity and different things. Really excited about the Bucs, and love all the insight you were able to provide on them. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, guys, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. And when the Bucs players underperform on the weeks that you start them, make sure you tweet at me very angrily and tell me I'm trash. So,
yeah, perfect. I want to see that WCB. Don't forget, I definitely want to see that.
No, I will get a picture of that to you guys. I will.
Awesome. Sounds good, man. Have a great rest of your night.
Thanks, Trevor.
All right, guys.